AI music has been on my mind for a while now, ever since Drake made that song Search and Rescue, because I legitimately felt like it was so low effort and so low energy that it could easily be replicated by an AI program. That doesn't make me an advocate for AI, it's just something that I took note of. I don't picture this type of song, this type of music being hard to replicate at all. And if at some point in the future someone decided that they wanted to pretend to be Drake or have him say things that he never consented to, they 100% could because of how quickly it's learning. And while the music that Drake has been making for the past 5 or so years has been shoddy at best, no one deserves to have their image or their likeness used in spaces or in situations that they never consented to. Here we've got an article from Billboard saying that on Friday, April 14th, the chart-topping artist took to Instagram to voice his opinion about AI-generated versions of his voice, particularly a video that features him rapping Bronx artist Ice Spice's Munch. "This is the last straw," he wrote on his story, along with a post about the AI clip. The pairing of Drake with Ice Spice is particularly interesting given the rapper's history. While Drake was an early advocate of Ice Spice, born Isis Gaston, which is the craziest name, he unfollowed her on Instagram, something Gaston had no explanation for in interviews. However, shortly after, he refollowed her. And if we pause the read right here, right now, I could only imagine the basement dwelling, "you need to slide for this artist" type of individuals that have been propping up and instigating beefs in music and back and forth between rappers for God knows how long, being able to legitimately use AI to create beefs between people because others can't differentiate who's actually rapping the verse. The amount of people that were propping up this new Drake in the Weeknd song that is AI and voice alone was shocking. Now, I'm not insulting their musical ear. I'm not saying that it's so obvious that this is fake, but I would have loved to see the reaction if someone had just put Drake and Weeknd snippet instead of AI, just to see how many people would have bought it. And if this AI collab is good enough for the people who listened to it and said that it was fire, said that it was awesome, said that it was great, if that's enough for them, I could only imagine the amount of people that will be tricked and fooled into thinking that someone threw a shot or took a jab at this artist. That artist hears it, and now we got a full back and forth off the back of something that was never real in the first place. We're in the stage of machine learning where it's learning faster than it's being regulated. So it 100% can go up on Spotify, on YouTube, on other streaming platforms most likely, be there for 1-2 days probably, and the internet goes crazy over it, and you know people are probably going to hear something about it at some point or another before it's taken down, if it sounds quote-unquote real enough. It even had a Metro Boomin tagline on it. I don't know the ins and outs of Drake and Ice Spice's relationship. With the age disparity, they really shouldn't have one, so that's a point of contention for me already, but I think it's incredibly weird and creepy to have your image or your likeness used in situations or scenarios that you'd never consented to. There was even a streamer who recently was under fire because he was caught purchasing deepfake sexually explicit content of other content creators, and on this website was the images and the likeness of his fellow female content creators being used against their will. None of that is okay. Drake's complaint comes after UMG asked streaming services including Spotify and Apple Music to prevent AI companies from accessing their copyrighted songs. AI companies would use the music to train their machines, something that is becoming a cause for concern within the music industry. In an email sent to Spotify, Apple Music, and other streaming platforms, UMG said that it had become aware that certain AI services have been trained on copyrighted music without obtaining the required consents from those who own the songs. "We won't hesitate to take steps to protect our rights and those of our artists." This is a concerning sentence for me, because it leaves the door open for who begins to take ownership once regulations are in place. This sentence doesn't say we will not hesitate to take steps to protect our artists. It says our rights and those of our artists. As a business, I understand why UMG would need to protect their rights, but the artist playing second fiddle to their rights in this scenario leaves me under the impression that if something were to happen to said artist, the label itself would still have free reign and dominion to use that artist's likeness without their consent as well. At the end of the day, I want this regulated, but not at the expense of the artist. Sure, taking away the ability from Johnny, who's a college dorm student making AI music because he thinks it's funny and wants to hear Meek Mill diss himself on Back to Back, so he has him rapping all of Drake's lyrics and then shooting it up to Spotify. Sure, he shouldn't be able to do something like that and monetize utilize it, but I don't want all the rights in the hands of the label either, where they would essentially get to dictate when and where AI would be utilized and necessary. Could you imagine, God forbid, anything happened to Drake or some other big artist and they say, you know what? We have the rights to use AI to use Drake's likeness to make a posthumous album. We can do so because the law that was created 5 years ago gives us the ability to do so. And whether or not you like it doesn't mean shit to us. We've already proven that there's enough public discourse and interest in this program for us to hire a few engineers or a few producers to make these beats, hire a songwriter, and get the program to do the rest. UMG later issued a statement regarding the email sent to DSPs. We have a moral and commercial responsibility to our artists to work to prevent the unauthorized use of their music and to stop platforms from ingesting content that violates the rights of artists and other creators. We expect our platform partners will want to prevent their services from being used in ways that harm artists, it read. Other AI covers making the rounds include Rihanna singing Beyonce's Cuff It, which sounded relatively believable aside from a glitch during a melodic run. While the implications of AI poking its head into music can be scary for artists and labels alike, it's hard not to smirk at Drizzy rapping, "Ass too fat, can't fit no jeans." And while the idea of that, again, is hilarious, while I and plenty of people have the opinion that AI music is generally trash at the moment, I've also had the opinion that a lot of Drake's output for the past few years has been shoddy at best, hasn't been that great, but people still love it. If the amount of people who agree that AI is doing its thing at a great level also agree that Drake has been great for the past couple of years, then of course there's an audience for this type of material, which is the most problematic part. The song being shitty now doesn't imply that it won't get better later. And this has been my question in regards to AI for a while now. What is the perfection point? I've had a lot of people respond to me saying AI music is trash by saying, don't worry, it'll be perfected at some point. But what is this point of perfection? Where is it that you want it to go? You want it to get to a point of replication so much so that it can actually replace the person that you've supported, like the real person, so that you can basically eliminate that real person from their music and have the AI version of them create whatever fantasy you want them to exist in. You can't have AI exist without threatening the livelihood or the image or the representation of music itself. You have AI do engineering, you're taking away a job from an engineer. You have AI do mastering, you're taking away a job. You have AI do producing, you're taking away from a job. You have AI do cover art, you're taking away from an artist. We as humans can take pride in the fact that AI needs to be directed by a human to have a quote unquote artistic direction. But I fear where this leaves artists in terms of consent, copyright, trademarking, I just don't see them obtaining the legal rights in this back and forth. God forbid this happens to an underground act or somebody that some kid just looked at on Bandcamp or something like that, decides to take their voice because they're an indie artist, and then boom, they have a flyaway song that sounds nothing like anything the artist would create. And since this is a smaller act, boom, no protection, no defense, no legality that will set them up for success. I wouldn't say I'm worried, but this doesn't look good.